Hello, and welcome to This Explainer. If you're an executive or a strategist trying to navigate today's absolutely hyper-competitive tech landscape, well, you're in the right place. Today, we're unpacking what is arguably the ultimate business case study of our time, the explosive rise of OpenAI. Really, this is a masterclass, and honestly, kind of a cautionary tale in strategic pivots, the sheer impact of high-stakes corporate partnerships, and the severe stress test placed on corporate governance during a period of hypergrowth. So let's just dive right into the first piece of the puzzle.
We really have to start by anchoring ourselves to this stark, underlying ethos, saving humanity. And you have to understand, this wasn't just some catchy marketing slogan. It was a rigidly defined operational constraint. Back at their launch in 2015, they were set up as a fully open-source, nonprofit lab. I mean, imagine starting a highly technical, intensely resource-heavy organization, not to capture market share, not to drive shareholder returns, but simply to protect the human race. Now that builds an incredible organizational culture for sure, but it also sets an unbelievably rigid operational baseline. They were entirely mission-driven, and that mission was strictly non-commercial.
But, as computing power demands absolutely skyrocketed, that pure idealism kind of collided with reality. Almost overnight, the organization was thrust into a multi-billion-dollar commercial battleground. You simply cannot fund a massive technological arms race on the budget of a traditional nonprofit. The sheer gravity of the technological demands forced them into a massive reassessment of their entire operational model. They went from being secluded researchers to frontline combatants in literally the most expensive tech arms race in human history.
All right, Section 1, the original corporate mission.
So their nonprofit origins meant starting out with a mission centered entirely on public benefit rather than commercial profit. They assembled a board that was optimized completely for ethical oversight and safety. We're talking zero equity incentives and a fiduciary duty to humanity, not to shareholders. Now, as a leader, you know how deeply an origin story embeds itself into the DNA of a company. And this totally unique structural setup is exactly what makes their upcoming business shift completely unprecedented.
Moving on to Section 2, the Microsoft Partnership Catalyst. It's really like looking at two different worlds. On one side, you have a nonprofit constrained by limited capital, and on the other, the immense, unparalleled scale of a tech behemoth. Microsoft didn't just walk in and offer cash. They provided the highly specialized Azure cloud infrastructure required to actually train these massive large language models. Injecting enterprise-level scale into a research lab wasn't just a funding round. It was a total infrastructural metamorphosis. It tethered their idealistic origins directly to the demanding, profit-driven realities of a publicly traded giant. Multi-billion. Let that sink in for a second. We are talking about multi-billion-dollar injections. This wasn't some modest grant just to keep the lights on. This was a capital influx so massive it instantly recentered the entire global AI arms race around this single alliance. Microsoft's backing provided the rocket fuel they needed to pull ahead, which fundamentally changed the math of the organization. Because let's be real, when billions of dollars are on the line, the expectations change, timelines accelerate, and the pressure to commercialize the technology becomes an absolute unstoppable force. Which brings us to Section 3, a massive business shift.
Navigating this evolution required a completely novel corporate structure. To bridge that massive gap between their nonprofit origins and the commercial arms race, they invented what they called the capped profit model. It was essentially a high-wire act of corporate engineering, designed to feed the beast of commercial competition while somehow attempting to keep the original idealism intact. From a structural perspective, transitioning an organization through these phases usually takes decades. But here, it happened at absolute light speed.
Think about it. They went from a secluded research lab founded just to save humanity, straight into becoming a commercial titan that was actively dictating the pace of the global market. But as leaders and strategists, you have to ask yourselves, what happens to a culture and to governance when an organization's core identity shifts this violently? You simply cannot pivot that rapidly without causing deep, structural fractures. The pressure always has to go somewhere.
And that leads right into Section 4, boardroom drama and governance. Now, I want you to look past the sensational tabloid headlines for a minute. This was the ultimate stress test of corporate governance during a hypergrowth phase. You had a board with a fiduciary duty to humanity, again, not shareholders, suddenly tasked with governing the most valuable, rapidly moving commercial entity on Earth. It was a fundamental misalignment of operating speeds and core philosophies. The internal drama we saw wasn't just gossip, it was a symptom of two entirely different corporate mandates violently grinding against each other.
This rapid-fire sequence of events totally shocked the world. Over a single weekend, the board flexed its nonprofit authority to abruptly remove CEO Sam Altman. But then they were completely overwhelmed by commercial reality and intense employee loyalty, which resulted in his almost immediate rehiring. Actually, severe volatility is probably putting it mildly. It highlights the absolute fragility of even the most powerful organizations when governance structures fail to keep pace with strategic reality.
So how does a strategic vision actually survive such chaotic internal drama? Think about your own organizations. When the governance structure breaks down so publicly, what happens to the underlying mission? This whole saga wasn't just a blip. It definitively proved that the commercial momentum and strategic alliances, specifically the immense leverage held by Microsoft, ultimately held the real power over the original nonprofit ideals.
Finally, Section 5. A tool or a god?
Consider the two perceived extremes of this trajectory we've been tracking. On one side, the original mission actually succeeds. They navigate the arms race and the Microsoft partnership to deliver an incredibly powerful yet controllable commercial tool for humanity. On the other side, you have an extreme concentration of power. I mean, when you survive a boardroom coup, secure multi-billion-dollar backing, and lead the charge on technology that literally alters human civilization, the strategic implications are just staggering.
So ultimately, we have to ask, are we building a tool for us or a god for himself? The pivot from a nonprofit to a commercial titan has already happened. The arms race is fully underway, and the multi-billion-dollar bets are officially placed. As leaders navigating this space, understanding the history of this internal friction and this massive corporate transformation is absolutely vital to anticipating what comes next. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep strategizing, and I'll see you next time.